two questions most frequently asked of an automotive designer are, where do we go from here, and why the heck did you do that? They're fair questions, even if they aren't always phrased that politely. And they're important questions, especially when you're introducing cars as new and fresh and innovative as Topaz and Cougar here, and the Sierra in Europe. These are leading-edge cars, products whose character and integrity propel us into the future of automotive design. Does that mean Topaz is the car of the future? No, it's the car of today with a lot of the future in it. Topaz is both where we are and where we're going. With its attention to aerodynamic design, to innovative power plants and electronics, to the dynamic relationships of interior space and exterior size, to the emphasis on obvious quality, Topaz is clearly something new and something different for the American driver. Not too long ago, we could get a new car simply by reshaping the steel. To get to Topaz, we had to reshape our thinking. And to fully appreciate the Topaz difference, you're going to have to do the same thing. When I first came into this business, the cars of the world were fairly easy to categorize. It was a simpler world. Now everything's changed. Americans are sitting at European drawing boards. Europeans are sitting at ours. The design concepts are becoming more similar, the influence more international. A car like Topaz would be just as much at home on the streets of Europe as here in the U.S. But perhaps the change is more dramatic over here. For generations, especially in America, we've been brought up on car designs that were often influenced more by fashion than by function. Topaz is different. It has a fundamental character and integrity that comes from something far more substantial. The tapered fuselage, the flush bumper, the slope of the grille, the wraparound parking lamps, the aircraft-type doors that blend into the roofline and conceal the drip moldings, the window glass approaching flushness with the outer skin, the slant of the rear window, the high deck with its sharp brake. All these styling cues were put there not just because they're attractive, but because they're aerodynamically sound. Form follows function, and it improves it. We learned a lot about aerodynamic design while developing the experimental cars like the Probe 4, because the people who worked on Probe also worked on Topaz. The concepts carried over. Superior aerodynamics was a primary Topaz objective. The first benefit of good aero is fuel efficiency. A 10% improvement in the drag coefficient can mean as much as a 5% improvement in miles per gallon. Beyond that, superior aerodynamics can significantly cut down on wind noise, giving you a quiet ride inside without having to add extra insulation and therefore extra weight. It also gives the car a better road stance by improving the vehicle's lift characteristics. This makes the car sit down and behave better, especially in the curves. But superior aerodynamics was only one Topaz design objective. Another was to create a car that could accommodate a family of 5 in comfort. To some people, that still means that the car has to be big outside. Now let me show you something. We think in terms of what we're used to, and family cars used to look like this. There are illusions involved here. You look at this car and say, well, if you make a car 3 feet shorter than this, you're going to have a lot less room inside. Not necessarily true. In the old days, we had cars with 7, even 8 feet of total overhang. In terms of space versus size, overhang is the illusion. In cars like Topaz, we're only shaving off a few inches of wheelbase, the important thing. But we're shaving feet off the overhang, which we don't need anymore. Now, a lot of this overhang was fashion, but some of it was needed to accommodate the big engine. If you take a smaller engine and mount it transversely, as we do in the Topaz, then you save a lot of space that never got to the passengers anyway. You also drastically reduce the weight of the car, which is one reason you needed the big engine in the first place. In reality, what we're doing is extending the wheelbase relative to the overall size of the car. In Topaz, that gives us ample passenger room in a car that is considerably shorter than its predecessor, a car that's easier to handle, more fuel efficient, and emphatically more space efficient. Yet it maintains the comfort and ride associated with bigger cars. At the same time, we're also cutting off side overhang. We've stopped tucking the wheels way under the metal, and we've developed what can best be called a treadier look and a better stance. Also on Topaz, the rear track is wider than the front track, which improved both vehicle stance and stability. Of course, how you shape the exterior also affects the interior. Comfort is a lot more than simply space. In the mammoth cars of the past, what you quite often had was emptiness rather than functional roominess. In today's and tomorrow's cars, the emphasis is on critical dimensions like hip, shoulder, knee, and legroom, not on cubic volume. And of course, in a front-wheel drive car, you gain important comfort space with a relatively flat floor. Form also follows function in the layout of the driver's instruments and control systems. The object here was to make critical instrumentation compact and clearly visible in the line of sight. All the primary driving controls you need are at your fingertips. The overall objective was to create a functional, attractive, and friendly environment for the driver and passengers. Like the exterior, the Topaz interior is smooth, sophisticated, and simple. All this enhances the feeling of security and control, which is a definite Topaz characteristic. A lot of that feeling comes from the feedback of systems like the rack and pinion steering and the fully independent suspension. In other words, the total design integrity of the vehicle. It's not just there, it is obviously there. You know it when you take the wheel. Another characteristic obviously there is the quality. The substantial look of the bumpers and the moldings, the flush bumper end caps, the way the aircraft type doors integrate into the roofline. In fact, all of the elements blend into the design in a way that not only looks good, but actually aids in the quality of assembly. You know, quality doesn't begin on the assembly line. It begins in the design of the vehicle and its components. We're giving as much thought to how the components fit as to how they look. And of course, they look a heck of a lot better when they fit. What we're saying with the elements like the aircraft doors is, look, this isn't something you can fake. This is obviously right or it's obviously wrong. The elements of the Topaz are obviously right. These elements, these parts were designed and built specifically for Topaz. Here is a look at the principal body elements on a Topaz. The items shaded in blue are the only ones that Topaz shares with other cars in our lineup. When we say Topaz is a new car, we mean it is a new car. In addition, critical supplier parts for this car began arriving at the assembly plants on January the 6th, a full 5 months before launch, so that we could be absolutely certain of their precision and their quality before we began putting them in the car. I keep saying car, but actually from a design standpoint you have two very distinct cars here, the sporty two-door and the more family-oriented four-door. Actually, I have a bit of a problem with labels like family car or mid-size car. Depending on the size and shape of the family, a Lynx can be a family car, a Marquis is certainly a family car. The four-door Topaz is not just a family car any more than the two-door is just a sporty car. With our new leading-edge cars like Topaz and Cougar, we're not creating cars that can be crammed into traditional pigeonholes. With these products, we're redefining the ballgame and carving out new market parameters. These are not copies, not replacements, but bold new automobiles with virtues that far outstrip narrow characterizations like family or youthful or mid-size. And frankly, I doubt that very many people ever bought a car because it was mid-size. They bought it because it was the right size. And Topaz is going to be the right size for a lot of people. The aerodynamics, the technology of the high-swirl combustion engine designed specifically for Topaz, the sophistication of EEC4, the latest generation of computerized engine controls that monitor and control fuel mixture, spark advance, and engine diagnostics. Even the different suspension levels available. These aren't the sort of things you traditionally identify with a family car, but they are all very much a part of Project Topaz. It's a completely fresh, new car, the first of its kind, and I think that all of us, designers, builders, salespeople, and owners, all of us are going to be very proud of it.